And if we're shutting them off by using, and by the way, I'm not saying that medications don't have their place if they're used in an integrative fashion and we understand what we're actually doing. But I don't think a large portion of our medical community or um, intellectual community at all really understands what they're doing by medicating themselves and their families, because they are literally numbing out your connection to what we're going to call God. If you can't feel what you feel, then there's no way for you to even understand what it is that you're missing. And this lack of feeling is really what we're going is we're looking at depression. And um, I'm going here, guys. Are you following me?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's interesting. I'm
Okay. Thank,
tracking with you well.
okay, that's all I want to make sure of. I want to go on into this depression story a little bit here. And that is that the best way for me to take this further is to tell you a little bit about something that happened to me a long time ago. And those of you who've watched the show for a while know that I'm doodling. I need to look at the camera. Well, I think I doodle. Those of you who've been watching the show for a while know that I use myself as a canvas for telling stories, things that have happened to me, so that you can connect in and also possibly see yourself in those stories or call me with your own experience, or we can learn together. But that's the only way I know how to do it with my particular setup. So, and my whole experience, my whole life is about experiential learning. It's not about learning from books. So years ago, I ironically came into, I met a woman by going to her yoga class in Atlanta. And I only went to one class. And, I'll just be honest with you, the class was fine, but it wasn't the most moving yoga class I'd ever been to. And I was used to having classes with my teacher who had moved that were just all encompassing, just moving every single time I saw them or went to them. And so I went to this class and I left that class, and it was very sweet, and that was it. And I didn't decide to go back. Um, but about a few months later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was hearing this woman's name. And I didn't know why. And for like weeks at a time, about 3 weeks in a row, I'd be somewhere and I'd hear her name and I'd hear her name. And I thought, well, I have no idea why I'm hearing that woman's name. So I called her up one day and I just said, hi, I know you don't know me. I found her card and I said, I just wanted to let you know I attended a yoga class about 3 or 4 months ago with you. And for the last 3 weeks, for some reason, I keep hearing your name. And I don't know why I hear your name. Would you meet me for a cup of coffee? And so she did. And she never said a word about what she did other than teaching yoga. We talked for a little bit, and she said, well, maybe you should just come take my yoga classes some more. And I said, well, okay. And I did. Well, shortly thereafter, I had a situation where I woke up in the morning with what I call the lonely feeling. Now, if we backtrack just briefly, I would tell you that I had been in traditional therapy since I was 18, so this was in my early 30s, and I had seen my therapist prior to this, probably about 3 or 4 months prior, and hadn't been back since then because something she had said to me that upset me. And what it was at that time was, I described to her something, and she said, "Oh, you mean like my old friend depression?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Do you feel like you've felt this way for a long time?" And I said, "Well, a while." And she said, "Since childhood?" And I said, "Maybe." And she said, "Yes, kind of like my old friend depression." And I said, "I'm not depressed." "What do you mean depression?" "I'm not depressed." And she said, "Well, these feelings you just described would indicate to me that you're experiencing depression." Excuse me, my little nose is itching here. And anyway, we went on and on about this, and I didn't like the idea that she would take me, gregarious, open, big, Leanne, and say that she had an issue with depression. It was very offensive to me and hurtful, and it didn't seem to resonate. And so I left her office mad that day, and I didn't go back until later. But I was mad that she said that. And so then here we are, fast forwarded. I've gone to see the yoga teacher and have tea with her, and she says, "Come join my class," blah, blah, blah. And then this is where we're at now. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. I'm lying in bed, and I start to wake up, and my children are asleep. They're very young. And there's no reason on the earth for me to be having anything but a pleasant feeling as I wake up. But instead, I wake up to this sense of gloom and doom, and it feels like a cloud coming towards me. And I think, oh no, not again. And one of the things that my therapist had said when we had talked about the depression that one day was that I said, well, what do you do about it? How do we fix it? And she said, well, you don't really fix depression. She said, you manage it. There are tools to manage it. You work with it. You know, we would work on creating tools for you to manage it. And so now here I am again, waking up in the morning, and that feeling is coming, and I called it the lonely feeling. And it just felt like that sense of this feeling coming over me of foreboding and dread and loneliness, and it would always feel like a real anxiety attack happening. But I would just, and I never knew if it was coming on for a day or 3 weeks. And I usually was like, oh no, here it comes again, now that I was being more conscious of it. And that morning I jumped out of bed when it started happening, and I was like, no, this is not acceptable. And I ran over to the corner of my room where uh, I had created a little meditation corner, altar area, and just got on my knees and I said, God, if there is one. And that's how I did it. God, if there is one, I'll do anything. You cannot tell me that I will manage this with tools. This has got to heal. There's no way I can be 80 years old and still managing this. Whatever this is, please help me. Please help me. And very shortly thereafter, I injured my head and stood up in a cave up in North Georgia, or I think it may have been lower Tennessee. Anyway, stood up in a cave and Lookout Mountain area. They had I think it's Ruby Falls. Yeah, it was in Ruby Falls. And I cracked my skull, but I wouldn't go to a doctor. I didn't bleed. It was really ridiculous how badly I hurt myself. And I went to see this woman. And I went to yoga a week later, and I just told her what was going on. I didn't know she was a healer. I went into her class because I'd been teaching and I'd felt wrong all week. And anyway, she and I talked, and um, some things happened, and I wound up in her office with her a couple days later, and we had an experience. And in that experience, I was first a baby, and I was prior to being born. I could feel myself coming down, and I was perfectly at peace. And then I came into this place where I felt like I journeyed into another tube, and suddenly I got extremely anxious, and I said, I want to go back, I want to go back, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, and panicked and said, oh my God, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, please don't make me do this again. And poof, then I was in another space. And once I was in that space, I could literally feel my mother's womb, and I could feel the vibration of my mother and what she was thinking. And I won't even go into that on the air, but it was very, very interesting and very painful for me at the moment. And then I was born, and I saw a light. I was a baby, and I saw someone holding me, and I was the baby, and then I was looking at the baby, and then I was the baby, and then I was looking at the baby, and my healer the whole time is asking me questions, and I'm like, no, 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 be quiet, because this beautiful white light formed on my head, and I was watching it, and it looked like tentacles going up towards this other light. And so I kept watching that, and she was like, what's happening, Leanne? And I was like, oh, there's this beautiful light, and I don't want to, and I'm like, oh, I feel so wonderful, when I had felt extremely depressed. The birthing process and being in the room with the doctor holding me was the most depressive feeling I can possibly describe. It was just so depressed and low and sad, and now I'm the baby, and I'm looking at this light, and she says, go to the other end of the light. And I said, no, I can't go to the end of the light. I'm perfectly happy right where I am. I'm at peace. And she said, no, Leanne, please travel to the other end of the light. And I said, I don't want to go to the other end of the light. Won't I die? And she said, no, we need you to go into the light. You're not going to believe what we see, what's there. And when I followed it and went into the light, it was like I walked into the hugest vibration of what I would call Glinda the Good Witch there was possible. It was just absolutely huge and unbelievable, this light. And I was just like, oh my God. And even now to put words into it almost feels like sacrilegious, because it was so incredibly beautiful and wonderful, and my experience of connecting with it was so incredible. And so when I went into that, and I said, can I just stay here? And she said, yes. And then after a few minutes, she said, you know, your guides have gathered and are here with you. And I said, yes, I know that. And which was something wouldn't ordinarily know. I just knew it in that moment. And she said, apparently there's something that you have asked for. and there you're being told that we will definitely, that they can help you with that tonight. Do you know what it is they're talking about? And I said, yes. And she said, do you want